last episode I ended with a joke about how bad the PSP was, and I stand by that. But actually, I think one of the reasons why this and Powered Up didn't end up leading to more remakes is largely because it was on the PSP, and I know there's probably going to be some people that, will stand by their PSP, and that's fine, if you actually do enjoy it, the more power to you, but really, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think there's a lot of denying that it didn't sell as well as other consoles, and if they had released these games with a little bit more up polish on something like the PS2 or 3 or whatever was out at the same time, 2006 I think would have been a PS3 launch title, so maybe late PS2 even.
Speaking of, it uses a bunch of X8 sound effects all
Yeah,
around.
so this also came out after X8, which kind of makes me curious about certain console port things, but basically it really just comes down to I don't think this is the right platform for this. I think it caused some limitations that it didn't need to. I think it caused some sales backlash that it didn't need to, and it just overall probably hurt the series as a whole.
Dude, you could get these games on the Switch.
No.
If
I could. I'd buy them. Which, actually, so this is being recorded after the announcement of Mega Man 11 and a bunch of other stuff for the 30th anniversary, which, let me say right now, I had no expectations for whatsoever, so that was a pleasant surprise. I'm glad it's not just an 8-bit game. I was really worried that if they did inevitably do an 11, it would just be another shovelware title. Not that I think 9 and 10 are bad games, I just think that it shows a little bit less creativity, and at this point would be more read as Capcom cashing in than actually putting forward any effort. I really appreciate what they did. Also in that announcement is the fact that you will be able to get all of the X games now on modern consoles, which means I, as a masochist, can 100% X7 again on my Nintendo Switch. And I am going to do that, so...
When are you going to do your speedrun of X7?
Maybe someday. But, so that's really exciting news. It's also a good opportunity for me to say, if you haven't played X8 yet, absolutely do. I know it's a little bit harder to find, sort of, by comparison. I'm sure it's not actually that expensive.
Look out.
I know. They're coming right at me. Props to this game, by the way, since it's just happened a whole bunch of times, for preserving the ability to start firing Fire Wave, then turning around in front of Met and having him die. That's just fantastic. I also think this will be one of the heavier doctored parts, based on what Myth was saying in the first episode, so, that's, just anticipate that.
See if you can find all the times I've cut out a death.
So, a big problem here, this game feels a little bit more unresponsive than the original, not by a lot, excuse me, but just enough to kind of make certain things more difficult. And one of those things is me trying to deal with the birds on this final minecart jump. Mm-hmm. So, that's the heavy doctoring. Basically, I just kept getting hit here. I was trying to do that because it's funny and not really worth it in the long run. I couldn't see it, but that's because the lag was really bad when our recording was going, so I don't know, maybe it'll be super obvious, who cares.
Honestly, if you're not looking for it, you won't notice any of the cuts.
Well, we mentioned it, so... but yeah, that was also mostly to showcase what Charged Electric Spark does, which is the one I mentioned earlier. Wait.
Like a true maverick, armored armadillo.
There's nothing maverick about following orders. We're not in the wrong, X.
More good-ass voice acting. So rather than shooting out the spark that then expands into a bar and goes off and to the left and right, it is now just a screen-clearing attack, which I think I do again here. It doesn't... And it might not be a pure screen-clearing attack, but for the purposes of X1, you're probably going to hit everything on the screen when you let it go. And it just feels really cool, and I'm biased because electric weapons are always some of my favorites if I can help it. So the fact that they made it more effective and kind of devastating just does it for me. And so here we get another change. Attack-wise, he'll now orbit the entire room like that, and occasionally his bounces are also a lot more quick or shallow, sort of, so rather than 1, 2, 3, it'll be like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before he starts going towards the other end of the room, which, again, those are the changes I don't mind. It's the weakness changes that really bother me.
Mission accomplished.
Which, that's really just a stab at Spark Mandrill, so take that as you will. But, Rolling Shield gets a little bit of a change now, based on some functionality, which actually I can go into, I think, pretty much right away, if I'm remembering right. It might show up. I'll wait until it shows up. I don't know if I like the new projectile too much. I think it reads too much as a sprite against 3D.
There's a few things in this game that really read as sprites, but
Instead of 3D, yeah. Which, again, I can't fault it too much. It's still fine. I love Launch Octopus's redesign. That's the other thing. I don't know if I've really touched on it yet. Going back, way back to the first episode where I mentioned the really good concept art, naturally all of the designs got overhauled and kind of modernized for this without really losing too much of the personality that made them great in the first place. And I think Launch Octopus is a really good example of that. It makes him feel a little more iconic, I guess? It's kind of hard to say unless we actually show the art on screen. I'll leave it up to you if you want to do those edits. Probably not. But
probably not.
this level also has a couple pretty major changes, if I'm remembering right. I need to kind of call them out as they happen. Not the least of which, though, is now you want to use Storm Tornado on these guys. Not that you wouldn't in the original. I'm the only one that does it a different way because I like using other weapons. To bypass that jaw, because it is now invincible from the front. Anglers does not usually have that. That is a change for this, which I think is neat. It's not the worst thing, but again, I'd rather have the classic powered up thing. Doesn't matter too much for mini bosses that way. Also, the Gulfers look like shit, and that bothers me. We got the multiple colors. That's normal. What else is different here? Kind of at a brief impasse right now. Oh, well, there is a really nice artistic detail coming up, which I appreciate. And these guys don't look like Gerald from Hey Arnold wearing scuba gear anymore, so that kind of bummed me out. But
If I were the regular version, woo!
If I were to complain about that for real, I think that would kind of invalidate all of my other discussions right now, so I'll just leave it alone. Oh, no spikes. It's docking bay down here, so that's...
Which makes more sense.
Yes and no. I don't think it does.
Well, if it's...
Falling down on this doesn't feel as good without the slowdown. That's another thing. But if you look... Oh, hold off. Because I showed off explicitly. Udaboros takes a lot more hits from Storm Tornado to kill now, which just kind of furthers the weird inconsistencies between how strong Storm Tornado is or isn't against large enemies. Which, like, again, really just kind of goes back to RT, where it's like, okay, but why? Like, if you're gonna trivialize it for this fight, why not all of them? Just fuck it. But yeah, if we go up here, which I will now, there are other docked Cruisillers, and I think that's really, really rad. This fight should still be there. A lot of it is because if you don't know to knock that down, which everybody does, because this is a classic game, you have to dodge between mines and spikes, which makes it extra perilous, and then you're extra reward to know to shoot down the... or sink the Cruisiller, because you're not only opening up a perilous fight that goes to a reward, you're also making it so that the normal route is more clear, sort of. Which, you know, kind of a stretch, but I like that kind of stage design, and making it so that it's just the mines and no spikes is another kind of like, okay, but why decision. There wasn't really a reason for you to do this.
So I really like that sort of breaching the water effect, like that water point.
What I was trying to do there was to see if there were Cruisillers up on the surface, I think, and I could never get high enough to actually check. But you can see one out in the back of this skybox background.
Launch Octopus! How could you do something like this?
This is just a really pretty remake stage.
I am an artist, UCX, an artist of
And I
underwater
think
combat.
you might have my favorite Maverick voice.
Not until now.
It really works.
Sigma recognizes that?
I don't want to even talk over it, but
And now I'm fighting to create an entire world.
I'm sure a lot of people...
This is a very...
I'm sure someone somewhere is like, that's dumb, he doesn't look like a smart guy. Octopuses are super smart, so I think it's really great that he's like a fucking smug, brainy asshole. But what I will show off here is one of the cool new things you can do with Rolling Shield. I can block all of these missiles, and then switch to another special weapon and keep fucking attacking, which is just fucking ridiculous, and probably one of the high points of this remake, because it really makes this a better utility. You can either now go invincible for a set period of time, and just blast through shit with Chameleon Sting, or if you're more confident in not taking damage, you can block some minor hits and just tear into people via combat. So I like that there's kind of two different vulnerability angles you can take instead of making it a little bit more specific when you would want to use this charge shot. It makes it a little bit more of a viable option, and I think that's really cool. Although, conversely, it now cannot block certain things that it could in the past, which I don't like, but whatever. It's just more of that small change pile. I was doing this mostly to demo whether or not that would be a better use of his weakness weapon in the long run than using it to hit him, because it's also still his weakness weapon. If you lob them onto his head, it kills him pretty quick. I think in this version I actually prefer using it that way because it values the shield part of Rolling Shield, and it lets you focus on evasion and kind of appreciate the fight a little bit more as a whole, as opposed to kind of sloppily dodging and still probably getting hit by some of the homing missiles while you're just, like, maybe bouncing the balls onto his head. And that also always bothered me, too, because his missiles can cancel them out. This just feels better.